As the House is set this morning to vote on a budget bill that would defund Obamacare, many conservatives are saying give it up because they believe that it will only benefit the president politically in the end and that it may end up weakening the GOP. Bill O'Reilly says that he sees no possible way law going through this.
What you are trying to do, the Tea Party is trying to do, is not know that the Senate is not going to go along, even if the House were to vote to defund Obamacare, which it will not. All right. And it will not for political, tactical reasons. I mean, the Republican leadership, Speaker Boehner and the others, well know that if the government were shut down by some kind of defunding, that independence that the Republican Party needs to gain in the 2014 elections would be angry. So it's not going to happen. You must know it's not going to happen. You must know the Senate wouldn't go along with it, but you still want to do it. And I'm saying to you, I just think it's destructive to your cause.
All right. So with that as a jumping off point this morning, leading the charge for defunding, former South Carolina Senator and current Heritage Foundation President Jim DeMint. Senator, welcome. Good to have you here this morning.
Thank you, Martha. Good to be with you.
So you heard Bill O'Reilly talking to the panel last night and a Tea Party representative and saying, look, you know, you can want all you want, but it's not going to happen politically. What say you, sir?
Well, this is much more than a Tea Party effort. A large and growing majority of Americans want to stop this government takeover of health care. I hear a lot of the political calculations, like we've heard from Mr. Rove and Mr. O'Reilly, but you rarely hear them talk about how unfair, how unworkable, and how devastating this health care law is going to be to Americans. They're losing their jobs, they're losing their health insurance, and people want their voices heard on Washington. So it's time for Congress and the president to take a time out on this and to stop the implementation of this health care law.
Well, some have suggested that what Republicans should be fighting for is a delay, and that the tactic that they're taking in the House right now is not one that would lead to that.
Well, Martha, frankly, it's the only way that the president is going to pay any attention to what the House says right now. We've seen that on a lot of things that the House has tried to do. And the president is going to cause a showdown, whether it be on the sequester, whether it be on the debt ceiling, or whether it be on the health care law. The Congress is going to need to stand up to this president. He's out of control. He's on pace to double the debt during his time in office, and he's expanding spending at every turn. So if the Congress doesn't stand up in some way, this president's going to continue to roll all over them.
I think a lot of people, you know, listen to you and think that that makes a lot of sense, and that on principle they would agree with you 100%. The question does turn to what you can do politically, and there's been an uprising really in the House over this entire issue because, you know, they're ready to go, and they got John Boehner on board as well, saying that he would go along with this bill that would defund Obamacare. And then you go over to the Senate side, and Senator Ted Cruz, who's gotten a ton of attention lately and is a potential 2016 presidential candidate, basically said, look, it's not going to pass. It's not going to pass in the Senate. And let's pull up. We put together some of the tweets that went out on this from some House members who are outraged, and they feel like Senator Cruz bailed on them yesterday. Take a look at some of these. The House agrees to send CR to Senate that defunds Obamacare. Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Mike Lee refuse to fight, wave white flag, and surrender. And there's one more, and there were a bunch more, but we just pulled a couple of them. Senate Republicans already declare defeat before the battle even begins. So much for standing up for the American people. What do you think about that?
Well, Martha, we keep hearing that someone's going to win or lose or not win the next election. We need to keep bringing people back to the fact that this law is devastating to America, maybe the most devastating thing in a generation as far as what it does to not just our healthcare system, but our economy, our culture, how we think about ourselves as Americans. I mean, it is completely un-American in a lot of ways for us as a country to be thinking of government-run health care. So that's the point. At the Heritage Foundation, we look at the policy. We research what it's going to do to the people of this country. And when they say, okay, you might lose, we say, since when do Americans not fight for what's right because they're afraid they might lose? So if there's ever been a time for politicians to take a risk on their next election, It's stopping the government takeover of health care. So this is not about political party or political calculation. This is about stopping something that's going to hurt our country and hurt millions of Americans.
Where you're coming from, and I think a lot of people do, looking at the polls, and you are now with a policy foundation, but in your role as a senator, you clearly understood, the political side of this as well. And are you disappointed with Senators Cruz and Senator Lee in terms of how quickly they backed down on this in the Senate?
Oh, I don't think Senator Cruz or Senator Lee are ever going to back down. I think they're among the most courageous representatives that I've seen. And they've led a courageous charge all across the country. That's what Americans want from their representatives, regardless of party, is people who will take their voices to Washington. And Martha, we know now from the polls, and I know it from being all over the country, Americans want this law stopped. They're not worried about the next election. They want the law stopped now before it begins on October 1st, which this is a couple of weeks from now. So we can listen to all the political pundits of what might happen if someone takes a stand, but frankly, it's time elected officials stand up for what they promised they would do.
All right. Senator Jim DeMint, thank you, sir. Good to talk to you today. We'll see where this goes.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Bye-bye.